Welcome to another special edition of Uncapped Notes. You might think because the word hustle is in the name of our venture capital firm that we encourage a win at any cost, by any means necessary approach to building your startup. Well, today's special guest is here to dispel any sort of misnotions about how that by any means necessary approach to business operations may not be your best path to growth. Please welcome to Uncapped Notes special guest, Susie Trujillo. Susie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Yes, I'm so excited to be here and talk about ops. I could geek out on this all day. So I'm very excited to dive in and share some tried and true frameworks with the Uncapped Notes audience.
Susie, you have advised and mentored hundreds of founders through your work at your consulting firm, STRUC. This is all on the business operations side, and you talk about how there are three key areas that founders need to focus on when thinking about business operations. The first of those is communication. Can you tell us more about how communication plays a role in efficient business operations?
Yeah, so there's these three puzzle pieces and they all kind of build on one another. And the first one, how companies communicate, is really setting best practices for collaboration. And what happens if you don't have this is a lack of clarity. And here's what I mean. When I start working with a client and I start assessing how they communicate internally, I ask them a series of key questions. Things like, does your team frequently silo information from each other? Is it clear how often you're scheduling time to connect with your teammates, colleagues, direct reports, depending on the size of the company? Are you using email or another system for internal collaboration and communication and conversations? Do you have recurring feedback meetings? Those types of things. And what this does is ensure there's clarity amongst the teams and the entire organization to a standard of communication and collaboration methods that save both time and money.
Okay, got it. So any top tips for founders who are growing their teams and need to think about setting up communication operations?
Some things that tactically you can look at today. I always suggest an internal communications tool for the company outside of how you communicate externally with others. So of course, tried and true Slack. Some people prefer Microsoft Teams. Other, usually in the Web3 space, love Discord, and also scheduling weekly recurring meetings with team members to review priorities. The second thing is to choose a central place to store company documents and assets. And with that, creating a standard SOP or standard operating procedure for how things are cataloged, used, and maintained. And the third is implement a operating cadence amongst the teams, junior associates, and senior team members for feedback. These are the three key things that I say to look at, and do these early on, because otherwise you're just kicking the can down the road and it's not going to get easier just when you have a bigger team and more going on. You're going to wish you thought about these things at the beginning when it's just a couple of folks.
Oh, these are great tools for founders to start to employ at that early stage. You know, at Hustle Fund, we use some of these and we use them very specifically. For instance, email is meant to be to-do list communication among the team. We use Slack for asynchronous conversation, discussion topics, but not to-do lists. And you talk about this cadence of check-ins. You know, we have for a long time tracked meetings. We switched to Notion a couple of years ago and use that to track all of our meetings and project work so that it's very clear what everybody's working on. But this regular cadence of one-on-one check-ons and all team meetings or subgroup team meetings, I think has really helped us at Hustle Fund as we grow. So Susie, moving on to the second area where you try to get founders to improve their business operations, it's about measuring success. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so something I see with all my clients and companies at this stage is it's so easy to fall into this never-ending list of tasks and work that makes it feel like you're so busy and working God knows, 60 hours a week, but you're not really moving the football down the field or making the progress that you want. So this is really kind of the project management side of things. And again, I have a list of key questions that I always ask to get to the root of the problem and identify some opportunities. And those are, is it clear who on your team is responsible for what? Are tasks and initiatives time-bound? So essentially, what I'm asking is, does your organization have a simple system for tracking what needs to get done, who is responsible for completing the task, and then when it needs to be completed by, which is really important. And I found without this foundational 3-step framework for managing tasks and projects, it's virtually impossible to track success. You want to be able to adapt and augment how you do business by understanding how well the execution is going. So this type of very simple questions will help you track growth, manage costs and resources, and ultimately, I've seen help secure other rounds of funding, because the clearer things are internally, the easier you're able to speak to your successes and then how you're going to use investment dollars to help you grow.
Okay, got it. So this helps founders figure out what their target is and track how close they're getting towards that goal.
Yeah, setting weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual goals. Sounds really simple. A lot of times people forget to do this and then they look back and go, did we accomplish what we wanted to? Also, from a tech stack perspective, you want to pick a solid program management platform. And there are plenty out there. Pick one that you like, that people are going to use and that you roll out effectively. Asana, Monday, Trello, Notion, we could go on, but you want a central hub where tasks can be tracked and that will roll up to company goals and KPIs. And the last is ensure that you have a guiding principle that helps the organization stay aligned on the mission, because you can get things done all day, but you also don't want to lose out on that North Star.
Okay. Final one, and I'm curious to learn more. This one has to do with building your team and the composition of your team.
Yeah. So in early stage companies, you're moving quickly. I think it's really tempting to fill all your available roles with kind of the nearest warm body and your cousin's college roommate who has the impressive MBA. And sometimes you just need hands on deck. But what I really stress to people at this stage is to be a little bit more intentional. And that doesn't mean having a very expensive or laborious recruiting process, but understanding that building the right team is one of the key indicators of a company's long-term success. So to that point, again, the questions that I ask at the beginning of assessing this part of the operational puzzle are, does your team need managers or individual contributors? What specific workforce gaps do you need to fill? Another is, at your stage, is it more advantageous to hire a consultant or a vendor before making a full-time hire, especially when there's budget considerations and you need to understand how much you can even afford at this stage with your headcount? Another is, have you drafted precise job descriptions based on your resource needs? And how are you determining that salary? I think a lot of times it's like, oh, well, we need someone in marketing. Well, is that a digital marketer? Is that someone to own brand? Is it going to be events and activations? And the clearer you can tell anyone externally what you're looking for, the better quality candidates you're going to get, which means a faster life cycle to find your person. And the last is, how easy is it to onboard and offboard new employees and team members? Are there training SOPs in place for newcomers and legacy plans for transitions? And a lot of times people say, oh, no, we're too small, we're too young for this. It doesn't have to be something overly complicated, but how wonderful is it when you join an organization to have a sheet that says, here's what's expected of you, here's all the list of resources available for you to be successful. And it saves a lot of time and headache, especially for your supervisors who will be required to kind of like bring you into the fold.
Okay, so what are your top tips for approaching the recruiting process when you're an early stage founder?
Number one is have a formalized org chart and reporting structure. This is going to help you identify workflow gaps quicker. And I mean this even if you have a team of 5 people. It's just going to be a lot clearer on who's responsible for what. You also want to determine seniority needs to guide budget and compensation conversations. Again, this can start with really small teams and get into the habit of broaching what the budget allows for and what the company really needs. And the last is to design a quick and straightforward recruiting process for all incoming hires to mitigate bandwidth drain. I think every founder has dealt with DMs on LinkedIn, then we've got email, then they might have a smart recruiter profile, then somewhere, and you have all of these inbounds and how to keep that organized. Come up with a repeatable process and some sort of visualization so it makes it really easy for you to see who's interested in working with you and make really smart decisions.
You know, we've talked on Uncapped Notes quite a lot about how team makes such a difference. And I think when you put together the team composition, the recruiting process, onboarding, and put that together with the other 2 items that we've talked about, both internal team communication and measuring success, all of these things will really help founders lay that early stage foundation of business operations. I could imagine a lot of founders listening to this episode and thinking, well, I'm only a team of 2. I don't need to worry about this right now. What would you say to those founders?
That anything that you avoid now will come back to bite you later. Almost like what doesn't kill you will mutate and try again. I really believe in that as a founder of a company, a lot of times you have to change how you've done things before. It's a very self-effacing process to lead a company from 0 to the moon. And the sooner you can get into routines and structures and good business hygiene, the easier it's going to be down the line. So start it now. Do these things now. They'll be so easy to implement, so simple because there's only a couple people on the team to get people on board and create these new routines. So then later on, it's so much easier to grow at a fast pace. And believe me, all my clients say, we wish we had invested in this work sooner. Every single one.
If any founders who are watching this episode of Uncapped Notes are keen to connect with you, Susie, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, you can connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter, active on both, and love to meet new people and in the ecosystem, and will always share knowledge there as well for further tips and tricks.
Susie, this has been fabulous. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. Founders, we will make sure to include Susie's contact information in the show notes. And I'm curious, what have you done on the side of business operations that has made a big difference to how your team operates and how you achieve your goals? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to like and subscribe to Uncapped Notes.